Hi guys, thanks for joining me for my second creative tutorial that I've put together for you. I'm going to show you how to do branch weaving. Branch weaving is fantastic on various levels. Firstly, you really don't need that many materials to complete the project. And secondly, you can adapt it for various different age groups. So for those of you who don't know, Frankie is 3. Doing the whole thing is too challenging for her, but we adapted it by me putting the string on for her, and then she helped cut up the thread and weave it through. We also went on a walk this morning where we found these pigeon feathers, and so she popped those in there as well, and has created this sort of shamanic looking little wand that she's been casting spells on me with all morning. But we've had good fun doing it. I have done a couple of other little examples for you. So this one here is a slightly smaller one with finer yarn. It's also double-sided. I really like the double-sided ones because you've got that extra weaving space to practice on. You've also then got the option of which side you display it. It's also, if you mounted it on the wall vertically, you can use it as a little pot, so you could put paintbrushes, pens, flowers, you know, whatever you fancied, you could put in there. So the other one that I've done to show you is a slightly chunkier yarn I've used, and it's single-sided. So I'm going to show you both ways of how to put your string onto the branch. So this way, which would give you the option of weaving on both sides, and this way, which will give you just one woven surface. I really hope you enjoy doing this as much as I've enjoyed it. I'm completely hooked, so I think it's a good job I've got a tree surgeon for a husband. But I'm going to now introduce you to the materials that you'll need to complete this project. I'm going to briefly describe to you 2 different weaving terms that I'll use quite a bit in this video, so they're worth remembering. And they are the warp and the weft. So your warp threads are the tension threads that you initially wind onto your branch or your loom. And to get a good warp, you want a nice even tension throughout. Now your weft threads are then the threads that you weave through the warp threads, generally by going over and under the warp threads to create your woven structure. I really struggled to remember the difference between warp and weft when I first started weaving, and my mum said to me it's easy. She said your warp threads are your vertical threads and your weft threads pass from right to weft, and that really helped me remember. Materials and equipment you're going to need to complete this project are firstly a nice sturdy stick with a V in it. You'll need some scissors. It doesn't matter what kind of scissors, as long as they'll cut thread. You'll want some kitchen string or garden twine. If you haven't got either of those, then the yarn that you use to create your weft can be used for everything. And I'm going to start with those 2 colours, but we'll see how we get on with them. A fork to use as your beater to beat the yarn down with. And finally, a tapestry needle. Now I'm going to show you 2 different ways of putting your warp onto the sticks. The first one will mean you can create 1 layer of weaving. So to do this, leave it on the spool if you can. I'm going to try and leave it on the spool, but because I'm having to do it on the table, I might have to cut it off at some point. So you're going to tie a nice firm double knot. If you're worried about it slipping off, make it a triple one just to be on the safe side. And then you can cut that loose end off. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to slide that knot round to the inside of the V. And you're going to wind it round and wrap it all the way round on each side. So that's your first, and that's your first warp thread, and you're going to want to keep the tension on there. So I'd suggest putting your finger on and trapping it in place as you wind it round again like that. And then you're going to come up underneath and over the top of the opposite side. So essentially you're doing a figure of 8. So wrap it all the way round, and then you're going to come up underneath the bottom and over the top of the opposite side, and then wrap it all the way round once, and then all the way round the other side. Now, when you get to the end, or however far up the stick you'd like to weave to, you're going to wrap the last thread round and round and round, and then just tie it back onto itself here, just in a normal double knot like that. And you can cut that loose tail off. Now I'm going to show you how to do your first few lines of weaving. Take a length of yarn off your ball and thread the end through your tapestry needle. Now I'm going to, because it'll weave quicker, I'm going to double mine up so that it's a chunkier yarn. There might not be enough on here actually, but we'll give it a go anyway to do 2 rows. So I'm going to start by going under my first thread and over the top of my second, under my third thread, over the top of my fourth, under my fifth thread and over the top of my sixth. And I'm going to carry on like that until I get all the way down to the bottom. Now, one of the reasons that I prefer doing the double-sided one is that you don't get this issue with having to pick threads up that are round the back end. Once you've woven a few rows of weaving, that will rectify itself. I just find it really annoying to start off with, but I'm going to show you this way so you've got the option. So because the tapestry needle's quite short as well, you might want to pull it through those first few threads, and then you can pick that up again. So it's coming under there, over there, under, over, under, over, under, over, all the way down to the bottom. But I'm going to pull it through again there. And with your fork, you might want to tighten it up like that and just sort of beat it towards the stick there. And I'm going to go over, under. Now, I'm all the way down to the bottom here. I'm going to beat that as close to the stick as I can get. And what you'll find is that you might not be able to initially get it tight up to the stick, but once you've got a few more rows of weaving in, you'll be able to press it in there a bit more effectively. And we can tidy this loose end up as well in a minute. So now I've got down to the bottom here, I want to do the opposite of this row of weaving over the top of it. So I'm going to come up, this thread's coming out over the top of this last warp thread. So I'm going to start by going underneath, then over, under, over, under. And you might want to use your fingers here to push the threads in the way that you want them to go. So we'll pull that through. We'll just even that up a little bit. Which one is it? It's that one there. And then carry on over, under, over, under. And if you're ever in doubt as to whether you're going over or under, just glance down at what the thread below it is doing. So with this one here, that thread is going underneath the warp thread there. So I'm going to go over the top of it. You do get nice long upholstery needles for doing this, which are very useful, but I'm thinking that most people don't have nice long upholstery needles at home, and you're much more likely to have a tapestry needle. So I'm going to show you like this, and it's perfectly effective enough. So that's your first few rows of weaving in there. I'm going to show you now how to do the double-sided weave, because you can apply everything on that to this kind of weaving as well. I'm going to show you now the way to put your warp onto your branch to create two warps to weave on, so you'd have a front and a back. Again, try and keep your yarn on your spool, and then you don't have to work out how much yarn you'll need for the entire thing. So you're going to start by just tying a double knot or a triple knot if you're worried about it slipping at the base of your fork, and then just trim off that loose end so it doesn't get tangled up in everything else. And then you're going to slide that knot to the inside of the V, and now we're going to, on each side, wrap it all the way round, and now bring it underneath and all the way over to the other side. And now you're going to do the same on this side, wrap it all the way round before crossing back over onto the other side, all the way round before bringing it all the way back underneath to the other side. And you're going to carry on like that. All the way round, and then all the way back over to the other side. You're going to carry on like that until you've got enough warp for however far up you want to weave. Now you can see here I'm coming up to the end of my stick. So what I'm going to do on this last one, just wrap it round and round and round, and then cut yourself a decent tail. And you're going to tie that back onto itself there, just in a normal double knot, in a knot like you tie your shoelaces if you were knotting them. And I'm going to put 3 in there just because I always really worry that it's going to come undone. Better safe than sorry. And then just trim that off like that. So you can see with the way that this has been put on that you've got one layer of threads on this side of the branch and another layer on this side, and that means we can weave one side in one way and we can weave the other side with something completely different. So we're ready now to put our first few lines of weaving in. I've chosen this green and I've doubled over the yarn so that it's a bit thicker, and that will mean it will weave a bit quicker. I've also made it quite long because these first few rows, there's quite a long way to go with them. I'll show you how to change colours, and if you run out halfway, it really doesn't matter. We can just attach a new colour in. So I'm going to start by up at this end, and you can either start by going over or under that first warp thread. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to start by going over. So you go over the first, under the second, over the third, under the fourth, and then just keep going over, under, 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 all the way down to the bottom. And then just pull that all the way through until you've got this tail at the end. You want to leave a couple of inches. Now I've got a second tapestry needle, but if you don't, you can leave this bit to the end when you've finished weaving. But I'm just going to tidy this loose end away. I like doing it as I go along because it means I don't have to backtrack and do it afterwards. And so you're going to weave it in the opposite way to this line of weaving on top, just underneath it. So you're going to come, so that's coming over the top there. So you want it to come round and under, over, under, over, under. And it doesn't have to be many threads. Might just do one more there, just to tidy that away. And then you can use your fork or your fingers to pull that down towards the branch. I'm then going to just snip this loose end. Careful not to snip your warp threads. And once you've got a few rows of weaving on top of this row, you won't really notice that at all. And so on my way back, I'm going to do the opposite to this row here. So it's coming out underneath the last warp thread. I'm going to start by going over the top, then under, and then the same all the way back, over, under, all the way back up to the top. And then you're just going to pull that all the way through. Now just be careful as you pull this row through, hang on to the loop at the end, and just make sure it doesn't pull those warp threads back towards the top. And then I'm just going to beat that down towards the branch like that. I'm going to weave my third row now. So doing the same as you've just done here, you're going to be weaving the opposite to this row. So this weft yarn is coming out underneath the last warp thread. So we're going to start by going over the top and then over, under, all the way down to the bottom. Just hold on to that loop, pull it a bit tighter, and then beat down with your fork. Now I'm down here, I think I'd like to weave up this side. You don't have to, you can carry on weaving in stripes all the way over, but I quite like it in a V shape. So I'm just going to quite simply do exactly what I've done here, but just up the other side. So this warp thread's coming out underneath, the weft thread is coming out underneath that last warp thread. So I'm going to go over, under, over, under. Just pull that through like that, and just make sure it doesn't bunch up at the bottom. And I'm just going to keep going all the way to the top. There we go, pull that through.
not too tight, and then just beat that with the fork up towards the top edge. And then coming back down to the bottom, it's coming out underneath this last warp thread. So I'll start by going over the top, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Just make sure that doesn't pull too tight. Over, under, over, under. Now, I'm going to go here. I could either hook it underneath here and weave back up again, but I think what I'm going to do just for this one, to give it a good solid V, is to come over the top of this one and just hook it underneath that last warp thread again, and then just pull it a little tighter, beat it up to the top, just keeping that V in there, and then weave it back up, so over, under, over, under. And we might just about get back up to the top with this one. And then I'm going to show you how to change colour. So I'm going to change colour here. I'm going to cut the tapestry needle off and leave a little tail here. Now, because your warp threads are quite spaced apart here, an easy option, and I think the easiest option, would be just to tie your new colour in so that the knot is going to sit underneath the surface of the weave, so you won't see it. I'm going to change over to a blue, and again I'm doubling it up, and I've made it quite long because you can see how quickly it runs out, how quickly it weaves. So I'm just going to thread that blue through, and I've doubled it up, so I'm going to just pull that all the way through, Now let's find the end. So I'm going to tie it on this side, because then I can judge where it's going to sit. So I want that knot to be sitting under there, because this green thread is coming underneath, then over, and it's going to then come under that one. So I want the knot to be underneath that warp thread there. And just tie that in an overhand knot. There we go, that will probably sit quite well just under there. And then just tighten that up. And then you can just snip those ends there. So long, I've made it so long. And so it's coming under, then over that one, and then under, over, under. You're going to pull that all the way through, like that. And then you can just nestle that knot down there. And so I'm going to come down, I'm going to do a few rows of blue, over, under, over, under. Over, under, over, under. And now down at the bottom here, I think I'm just going to loop it around this second to last warp thread. So we'll pull it through up to the point that it needs to be here. I'm getting caught up on everything. It's because I've made my thread too long. There we go. So just make sure you don't pull that too tight. Beat that down towards that edge again. And then with this one, I'm just going to catch this thread on the way back up. So it's going to come over there, and then you're back to doing your over under on the way back. Need to pull that through to tighten it up. There we go. And then beat that down with your fork like that. So I'm just doing my last couple of stitches here, and what I'm going to do to hide this end away is just weave it over and under a few times, back down through here. Doesn't have to be many. And then I'm going to push it through the back like that, and then give it a snip. And there you have one side of your branch weaving completed. I could have done that slightly less wonkily, but you get the idea. You've now got, it's easier to see now that you've got this second layer, so you don't have to do it, but you've now got the option of weaving on the back side of it as well, and then you'd be able to sort of slide things in. I really hope you enjoy doing it. I've found it thoroughly enjoyable, and yeah, please remember to tag me in on anything you create. I really love seeing your creations. Happy weaving.